So you're very welcome to the latest episode of On the Bench, the official podcast of the League Managers and Coaches Association of Ireland. My name is Jamie Moore and I'm very happy to welcome the new Galway United manager to the show. John Caulfield, how are you?
I'm good, Jamie. Yeah, hectic week and, looking forward to the game Friday night. So it's great to be back. Great excitement up here and very excited about the job. So, obviously Galway are at the bottom of Division 1, so it's not a good place to be, but lots of work to be done, and I'm hoping that over the next 8 or 9 weeks before the end of the season that we can, get a number of wins and get a bit of confidence into the team. Obviously, the team has played 8 league games this season and they haven't won any games, so that's not great. So but it's exciting and really look forward to it. Great facilities up here, great place. Historically, in the 90s when I used to play, Galway were a really strong club, had really strong teams, and it was always a tough place to come. But the last number of years, the team since it's got relegated has struggled, and for a city the size of Galway, very sporting city with rugby very strong, Gaelic very strong, a strong Galway United soccer team will bring, when the crowds come back. There's huge interest in Galway here, but at the same time, you need a successful team to get people behind you.
Yeah, as John mentioned, Galway playing Shelburne in the FAI Cup on Friday. If you're listening to this interview after Friday, don't worry, we're going to talk about the Shells game at the very end, so the interview is still valid and relevant for people, and just talk in general about John's path back to the league. And we know, John, you were appointed last Friday and you were able to watch the team in their scoreless draw against Bray in the league. Alan Murphy, the previous manager, lost his job after they lost to Drogheda. And as you mentioned, the team hasn't won any of the 8 league matches in this shorter season. What did you make of what you saw firsthand, and how happy were you just to be back involved in some capacity in a League of Ireland game, even if you were in the stand on Friday before you officially took over at the weekend?
Yeah, I suppose maybe after 10 or 15 minutes watching the match Friday night, Jamie, I was wondering what I was doing going back into football. But look, we all have that passion, we all have that love for the game. And what I saw, to be fair to the guys, Bray were really good in the first half. And Matt Connor made a couple of really good saves, kept us in the game. And then the second half we played very well. We passed the ball well, we moved well, a lot of very good young players coming through. And possibly at the end of the match, we had a couple of chances, could have won. But overall, there was a lot of stuff to work on, but certainly, a lot of very positive things within the group. And since I've got training this week, I suppose they've got to know me a little bit better. And, I like my teams to be exciting, I like my teams to attack, create chances, playing with high energy. So, a lot of work to do to get the team to play that way. But, there's quite a lot of talented players within the group. And so it's for me to assess now until the end of the season, give everyone the chance to prove themselves, and then, obviously restructure at the end of the season then.
Yeah, and we're speaking on the podcast of the League Managers and Coaches Association, John. So a lot of people watching and listening will be people involved in the game, maybe younger coaches or experienced ones, and interested to find out the process of how a League of Ireland manager gets a new job. And we know Alan Murphy left. Is it as simple a case as your phone rings from someone in Galway during the week? Do you apply for the job, and how quickly do you meet them, and how quickly did you decide that you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, well, it happened very quickly. I got a phone call Wednesday evening, and spoke again on Thursday morning. Met the board Thursday night, and we had more or less agreed. It was very late on Thursday night. It was about, I think, 1:45 in the morning, and then obviously tidied up a few things on Friday, and then it was announced. I suppose the big thing at the minute, if you're asking Jamie from my experience, is that when I was coaching, I went into non-league football, junior football, amateur football, and I felt for me it was brilliant. You learn so much dealing with people, dealing with adults, dealing with problems, what can go wrong. And for me, it was a great learning experience. And I've no doubt, after Avondale United, UCC, the Irish universities, being with all that, dealing with Avondale, where guys worked every day, rushing to train or amateur lads, to UCC, an all-student team, different challenges there. But all great learning experiences. And, I suppose ultimately when I got into the league and I applied for the Cork City job at that time and eventually I was appointed, certainly there was no doubt that the background of learning in the non-league was crucial. And sometimes at the moment I just feel, sometimes a lot of the lads that are doing the coaching courses, they're in the League of Ireland playing and they see themselves wanting to go straight in looking after a League of Ireland team. And, if I was being honest with you, I'd actually say, they should be advised, look, go in and take a junior team over, do a couple of years, get your grounding, get a bit of experience, get your organisation right, get you get to deal with issues of dropping players, players leaving, players late, players giving you a guff for being taken off, and that's what I would say. So I often see on the courses now that it is difficult for young coaches, and just because you may have been a good player, and but managing is totally different, because one thing is coaching on the pitch, but in Ireland, I suppose the difference is, you can see across Europe, a lot of clubs, they have a coach, they have a general manager, they have a technical director, because obviously that's the way the game is, but there's loads of money in those places. In Ireland, very much, when you become the manager, you're also the coach. You're also the guy that has to do a lot of other stuff, Jamie. And that's really where non-league football helps you, because you end up doing a lot of that type of stuff, you know what I mean? And while one side of it is, okay, to go on the pitch and coach, you have to deal with the people. When you're dealing with a squad of 22, 23 people, you're dealing with lads who are 18 and you're dealing with lads who are 33 or 4. Different scenarios, some have families, young fellas don't have any commitments. So it's about a man management, and that's probably an area that's sort of, it's overlooked quite a bit. So so from my own experience, I would always say encourage people that are doing the coaching badges, go in and take over a junior team, get a couple of years under your belt, and you'll never regret that.
How soon after the phone rang on Wednesday evening did you decide that you were taking the job? And when you had the meetings late onto the Thursday night with the board, what type of things were you looking to make sure were in place? Because you've obviously gone from Cork City, who were, one of the top teams for years, into the first division. So I'm sure you wanted to try and make sure that as much as possible you had the resources there to take the job, to try and do a good job.
Yeah, well, I suppose for me, Jamie, with my experience, I look at the overall package, and while people refer to Cork City, people do forget that when November 2013, when we took over, the Cork City were in a really poor condition. They were heavily in debt. There were 6 players on the books, and a number of players at the time, Darrell Horgan, Shane Duggan, players like that, were moving and leaving because they weren't going to stay, so they'd all gone. So so it wasn't just all great times. Yes, we worked incredibly hard with a fantastic backroom team that I had, and we put 24/7 to rebuild the club, and that's what happened. And we rebuilt it, and it ended up turning the corner very, very quickly, which was great. But it certainly wasn't walking into, there was no budget in the club. The budget was, we signed 4 amateur players. We signed players from the non-league, people I knew, people John Collin knew. Obviously, it was Sullivan, Mark O'Sullivan, Josh O'Shea, Michael McSweeney, Rob Lehan, lads that first year were absolutely phenomenal for the club. So the main thing for me is that, people get, I suppose where I'm looking at with Galway, obviously in the last year and a half, there's been a few bits and pieces that have happened for me that have come up. I've met people, but it just wasn't right. And, I look at Galway, beautiful stadium, fantastic training facilities. They work with Salthill Devon, they work with Merview, great facilities up in Galway. Galway have always had very, very good players. Obviously, the Knock had a number of them, Stephen O'Donnell, Patrick Hoopen, Galway lads. So few guys playing around the country. So I suppose Galway has always been a soccer hotbed, but what I look for when I go into the club is, what really do the board want? Are they ambitious in terms of, is there togetherness to really want the club to do better? And while I know there are lots of problems, and the team may not be as strong as they were hoping, off the field, there might be a number of issues, but a lot of that type of stuff, I can build and put structures in. It's really that there's within the club itself, that there's a unity, that there's everyone really wants to put their shoulder to the wheel and get things moving. In terms of budgets, haven't discussed this. It was never my concern. My concern at the moment was to go in, assess the club, assess the players over the next 10 weeks, get to the end of the season, see where we are, and then restructure for next year. As I said, my first couple of years with Cork City, our budgets were very limited, because that's where we were at the time. But obviously, as we progressed to get into Europe and competed for trophies, and obviously the pressure to stay trying to win trophies, it changes then. So, but at the moment we're nowhere near that. So our aim at the moment is really just to get us back to be very competitive in the first division, and the ultimate challenge is over the next 18 months to see, can we get out of the first division.
You spoke earlier on about some of the things involved in being a League of Ireland manager, John. You might explain to us and those watching and listening about your first week as the Galway manager and the amount of things that you had to do away from just being on the training pitch with the players, because there's so much, and I'm sure you wanted to try and speak to people, learn about venues, learn about everything, and really get your feet properly under the table.
Yeah, so first of all, you start with the basics, as you'd say, Jamie, the basics of training gear. Have we gear? Have we enough balls? Have we enough bibs? Who looks after what? Is there food after training? Can we train on grass? Can we train on or are we on all weather? Because a lot of training up here is on all weather. A lot of the players are working. Some of them aren't working. Can we train double sessions every day? How many players will we have? Some players had arrangements with the club that they didn't have to train some nights of the week because they were working late. So it was just a bag of loads of different things. So it was about meeting players and seeing, and some players saying, well, look, I don't train on Tuesdays and Wednesdays because I work late. I can't train on a Tuesday morning because I'm working. So it was, but look, it's the first week, and I think the guys will get a handle of where, very quickly, of where I'm trying to get to. And I suppose the things like, even simple things like video analysis, who does it, or does anyone do it, versus such a thing up here, who collects the food, the previous manager collected the food, you know what I mean? Do I expect to collect the food? No.
Yeah.
Because because you don't have the time for this, So getting delegation, getting people in to do certain roles and be specific and say, look, will you look after that gear? Will you look after this? Will you look after that? And just giving guys responsibility. And I suppose the enthusiasm, that they want to do it with enthusiasm, but they feel to say, look, that's your job. You just look after that. And then straight away, you set a bit of organisation in around the club, and you guys to get they all have their different roles, and then all of a sudden comes together. But unless you are used to that, or unless you've experienced that, to be able to set it up very quickly, it doesn't happen that quickly. And that's probably where as I said to you, when I was in amateur football, I learned all that from opening the gate, going to training, opening the dressing rooms, locking the dressing rooms, and close the gate after training, balls over carrying the ball bag over my back, doing everything, which is junior football. That's why it gives you a great learning of what you have to do and what needs to be done. So, and the other side of that, Jamie, the one thing I often think about coaching is that, and a lot of coaching courses, and you learn so much on them, but also there's a falseness in the sense that everything is done on the board. You have to do it on the pitch.
Yeah.
Because we can all move the cones around the board, but at the end of the day, when you're on the pitch, it's not as simple as that, because where you think the opposition player might be, he may not be. So you can't be going and actually doing the practical stuff, and the more practical stuff just makes you a better coach. And so that's so it was a hectic week, and there was press conference, and it was just absolutely fantastic. But there were early mornings, long nights, and that's the way it is. But if you're into this and you love it, and that's what you want, that's what you need to do,
And of course, the people that help you with all that, John, are your staff. How did you go about forming your staff? And you spoke about, someone collecting the gear and someone looking after the kit and someone doing the food and someone doing the video and stuff. How did you go about forming your staff? I know Johnny Glynn is going to be involved and Colin Fortune is going to be involved as well, but there's more than just them, and you have to try and ask your staff to do specific things that you want.
Yeah, and I suppose the thing is, and you're correct, and the thing you have, Jim, is that particularly, it's the first time in any job I've ever had. I don't mean job because obviously when I was in amateur football, it wasn't a job because you had your day job and it's just in the evening time you did it as a passion. But I suppose the difference this time is the first time I've gone in during a season, as opposed to being the end of the season when you bring your own people in, you set structures. And it is difficult because sometimes, like, Alan Murphy, who I would have met on numerous occasions, lovely guy, good guy. He had staff in with him. They probably were unsure, what was going to happen. Derek O'Brien, a very good guy, came in with Alan. Derek wanted to go out with Alan, which was fine, but still was very helpful to me, since I've taken over. Colin was helping, so I asked Colin to stay to the end of the year, Colin Fortune, and see how we get on, because look, he wouldn't know me, I wouldn't know him, but he's a very good guy. There's a goalkeeping coach there, and there's a strength and conditioning guy. Met them all, really good guys. So I really wanted to, when you change a manager, there's always upheaval, and it upsets or the players. Maybe in this occasion it might be good for the players that there is a change, because they're going to be wondering what's going to happen, and maybe with the way the results had gone, they hadn't been performing the way they possibly should have been for Alan. But at the same time, Johnny Glynn is head of the academy up here, knows all the players inside out, with a good handle on the junior scene. So I asked Johnny to be involved. So with Johnny is a teacher as well, Jamie. So, and he's a very he's his own family and they're young, and so I asked him to to stick with the academy, but to also help me in which he's doing. Colin is there. Liam Carney, who I would have had with Cork. Liam will be involved in a part-time role until the end of the season, and Gary O'Connor, who has been with the under-17s up here and would have been involved in Galway United's first team going back probably 4 or 5 years ago, and Tommy Dunn would have been there. He's coming to help in. So I've been using all the local lads, and they're all great people and great lads. And so while people might have thought that I was going to come in and say I want to bring in 4 or 5 people, not at all, because why would you do that when you're dealing with local people here who are really passionate about the club and want to do the stuff? So what I have to do is just give everyone a fair chance, and then at the end of the season just assess that, going forward. So but the main things, like you look at Gary O'Connor, Colin Fortune, Johnny Glynn, all passionate about Galway United, and you can't beat that, Jimmy, when you're putting a team of people like that together. But and plus the fact they know, they're all good at lots of things, but when you give them certain roles, then you try and give them the roles that are probably their strongest. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm trying to do.
And on that, and again, we're speaking on a podcast where a lot of people watching will be involved in coaching and football. John, what do you look for in your staff? What are the main things you'd write down on paper you're looking for your staff to be, looking for your staff to do, apart from the obvious one, which is trust?
Yeah, hard work and loyalty. Hard work and loyalty are the key, but obviously then they have to have, qualities, and qualities in the sense that, if it's a scenario where, you're looking at, particular areas of coaching, you might end up with sort of, one person might be very strong coaching, certain things, and but at the end of the day, I suppose, Jamie, the key thing is that it's really hard work, that you nearly have to give Galway United your number one. Yeah, and it's like League of Ireland is at any level, whether you're in First Division or in Premier Division, is hard work, and to have any chance of doing anything, you just have to work incredibly hard, and if you don't do it, I don't think you can have success. And I just think even when you work 24/7, there's no guarantees. But I think at least if you do that, you have a chance. But you need staff who can do that and think that way. And sometimes, Jimmy, it can happen that you might end up with staff that don't want that, or the commitment is just too much. And then there's different scenarios in a situation where, for me, I don't have kids; they're adults now, so I don't have that responsibility. But then you have people within the club and they have young families, and that's a different challenge, and it's how to balance that. So and there may be occasions, with people who say, "Look, John, I can't get the commitment that you really want because it's you're nearly just morning, noon, and night working on it. I just can't do that, and that's fine too as well. But sometimes you might be able to work it out with people to say, well, could you specifically do this, and if you do that, that's okay. But in terms of staff, certainly hard work, trust, loyalty, and I suppose identifying their strengths within the group and giving them that responsibility or delegation. It depends which way it is, Jamie. Like, you go from junior football when I was Avondale, then and as I progressed, you're doing everything. As I said, opening the dressing rooms, closing the dressing rooms, getting the gear washed, and then you progress and you delegate. So I like to give my staff responsibility, and they do their roles. Other managers prefer to do everything themselves. You know what I mean, which is their choice. But I prefer to give guys set roles and delegate that way.
We're speaking on Thursday, and John has a game on Friday. So, John, I have 3 more questions, if that's all right, because I don't want to keep you all morning. We've spoken about the staff and yourself, the players, and you mentioned earlier on about, some might be available to do some mornings, some can only do evenings, some can't do every evening because they've work or kids or whatever, and they also haven't won the league match all season. How do you go about managing that group for everything that they need, from trying to get their confidence up to making sure that if they have agreement A with the club, that it's being changed to agreement B, with a conversation with you, and ultimately with 10 league games left for you guys, you're trying to get into that top 5, and you need to try and make sure the players are on the pitch for you to do that.
Yeah, well, firstly, Jamie, it's incredibly difficult. But what you have to do as a management team, and as a manager, try to put in a platform for the moment to see, can we get the most out of the lads over the next 10 weeks? And, there's no point in me going along saying to a guy, you have to be at training on Tuesday morning and he has a job, because it's not fair to the guy. It's because that is impossible. He can't do that for the moment because he's his day job. So you have to see then, can I set up something to maybe take him after work, or with my coach, and say, look, just 4 or 5, 6, 7 guys there working. And thankfully this week we were able to do, we had a number of lads who were students, and that we were able to train Tuesday morning, and we were also able to train Tuesday night. But it's trying to facilitate the lads, and no point in saying, well, you have to be there when they just can't. So you have to facilitate them, and go and say, provide maybe smaller sessions later in the evening for these lads, so they can do a bit extra, and that's what you have to do. And I suppose at the minute, for me, it's about just trying to get as much out of the lads until the end of the season. They haven't won a game. So, like, when people are asking me about playoffs, all I'm thinking about, can I win a match? Can we just win a game? Because we haven't never won a game. So, so I'm not even, like, my next game is in the league against Athlone Friday week. The cup is this weekend. Great to have a game in the cup, just to have a crack in the cup, because Shelburne are a great side. But my next real game is Athlone next week, and that's my first league game. I was just seeing, can we put in a performance to get a win, because we haven't won a match. And it's like habits, Jamie. If you get in a habit of losing and not winning, well, it becomes a mindset then that players don't believe they're going to win, and then they believe they're unlucky, and the referee was wrong and this was wrong, But but likewise, if you start winning and get a bit of confidence and momentum in the team, then it's the same situation. So for the moment, I'm just trying to focus on, see, can we win a game.
John, you left Cork City midway through last season, and every manager always speaks about, they're looking forward to having a break. But for some managers, that break might last 5, 6, 7 years, and they still can't get back in And I know you went back on the road with Diageo for a bit. You did some management with the under-16s in West Cork. But did you miss the League of Ireland? And what was the main thing that you missed, if anything, in your break of which was about 16 months? Am I right in saying maybe a little bit more?
Yeah, I finished with City in March, the end of March.
Yeah.
And
18 months, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, about that. And then I went back in the day job in end of November. So I was off. But certainly when I was off, Jamie, definitely for 2 or 3 months, it was, I needed that, because, it was so intense, and, it was a real, it was a brilliant time at Cork. Pressure was massive. So it's hard to explain, sometimes people say to you, why would you want to go back to that? Why would you want to go back to seeing and hearing people criticising you and knocking you and whatever? But I think, that when you're a manager, that's part of the game, and it's either in you or not. And, that's why so many people don't want to be managers, and then that's why a lot of people do want to be a manager, because they just, the buzz and the thrill, there's nothing better than coming off the pitch after winning the match. There's nothing, there's no kick or buzz better than coming off and you won the match. Likewise, Jamie, when you lose the match, it just ruins you. Not only does it ruin your weekend, it ruins yourself, because it's, you take everything personally, but it's trying to keep it at distance, which is very difficult. So it's just, I suppose, anyone that manages, it's that buzz and excitement. So for me, I went back to work, but I had been attending all the League of Ireland matches. I was doing a bit of media work. There was 16 West Cork. That was just a little bit of fun where I live, Jamie.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a bit like, I was attending games and doing media, but there's nothing like being back out. Even this week, the first going back out the training pitch, doing the sessions, watching the lads train. There's nothing. The buzz is incredible, and when you get to match night, then obviously, you're more intense. But if you get a win, then it makes the whole week, So I think that's why we're slightly half mad, because we live for that,
John, lastly, a question I didn't think I'd be asking any football manager ever. Being an out-of-work manager in a pandemic, and then going to an in-work manager in a pandemic, and trying to deal with all the extra bits involved in keeping everybody safe, and touch wood, making sure that the games continue and the season finishes. How have you found all of that? And it's just such a different place to be for everybody at the moment, really.
Yeah, it's so different, so weird. And look at health, safety. Everyone has, in this country, has been phenomenal. I think since lockdown, I know there's been a few cases really, but since it happened, the country shut down, and the discipline of the whole country was incredible. But it is a difficult time. Obviously, this the virus is not going away, and we all have to manage it and see what's best. From a team point of view or a crowd point of view, the fact there's no crowds, it's a bit false, Jamie, in that sense, because you'd love to be, but that's just the way it is at the moment. But that may change soon. But I think there's, the weird things are, things like you can't have showers, and you think about that. We trained the other night, Tuesday night, and absolutely lashing rain at the wind, and fellas are going into their car and maybe driving 25 minutes home.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, like you assume there's a way of saying, look, could we rotate showers? Could we rotate people going into the dressing room? But if you think about it, people sitting in their cars, you're down in Cove and you're in Galway, or Cove come up to Galway, and it's a wet night, and they have to change and get the bus full of showers. The chances are you're much more likely to pick up some form of a flu, from something like that. So that's probably the one area that I find is the most difficult, because I'm going, surely they should be allowed, lots of the grounds now, we have 8-10 showers, surely you could rotate showers, and but I know they'd have to be cleaned afterwards, but it's one of the ones that I find is probably the most awkward one at the moment,
Would you believe I interviewed Stuart Ashton, the Cove manager, after their first game back against Bray a few weeks ago, and the rules for the media are the media can't interview managers inside, it has to be outside. And it was lashing rain, John. So I stood outside. Stuart stood just inside the door. All of his players were soaking wet getting on the bus, and he made the same point. I believe it's to do with the droplets of the virus and the steam of the showers, so I've learned. That's apparently, on a serious note, that's apparently the reason for it.
Well, okay, Jim, I'll take your word. I'm not a medical guy, but yeah. And look, it's hard to know because there's some confusion because there's different scenarios when you look out there of, we've seen this where, they've reduced the no crowds of matches now, even though it's outdoors.
Yeah.
And even in junior pitches, you're going, you could easily have a couple of hundred people standing around the pitch, and then you see shops where there's no limit on the number of people going in, and it's confusing, and certainly you would imagine with outdoor football and that people being outside, being at matches shouldn't be a problem, certainly to a certain limit, so that was surprising that was cut back. But let's hope that in the next 2 weeks we go back the other way and things will lift a bit,
Great stuff. Engaging, interesting, and fantastic as always with this time. John Caulfield, the new manager of Galway United. Thanks a million for your time on the bench, the official podcast of the LMCAI. The best of luck against Shells and for the rest of the season, John, and we'll see you at a game soon.
Thanks, Jimmy.